Welcome to From Doubt to Drive, Entrepreneurs Only. Join us on an inspired journey through the ups and downs of successful entrepreneurs. Our hosts, Mario C. Bauer and Florian Schneider, will explore how conquering doubt is essential for entrepreneurs to truly unleash drive. By being a part of our community, you too can learn how to propel from doubt to drive. So tune in, buckle up, and enjoy.
So welcome and welcome back. Florian, what's your favorite chocolate taste? Are you a sweet tooth?
Sometimes yes, but I like dark chocolate. I really like
the real chocolate. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today. So today we have with us Katie Johnston, entrepreneur and chief chocolate officer. What a title! Katie was born in New Zealand and grew up in UAE. And 8 years ago, according to our research, she met an Emirati brother and sister and launched together Mirzam Chocolate Makers in Dubai. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join your podcast.
Happy to have you here because we had a lot of fancy people, but we had nobody with such a fancy job title. Chief Chocolate Officer. That seems to be the dream job. So how you ended up being a Chief Chocolate Officer, Katie? How you become a Chief Chocolate Officer?
I think having a combination of life experience in marketing leads one to create the most interesting job title that they can. But actually ending up working in chocolate is probably the result of, following my values and a lot of luck and hard work. I've always been obsessed with chocolate and engineering and never thought that it was a career path that was something that was, as a girl, I guess young girls dream to be ballerinas and you just think those sorts of things are impossible. I wanted to be a chocolate maker and it was like, well, that's a silly thing to do. Don't do that. But eventually life keeps taking you back to what's really important to you. And here I am.
I read this story, Katie, that you said in one of the interviews that you always, like your mother said, you sniffed the chocolate, although she was hiding it everywhere. You always found like a chair or a table to climb on and find the chocolate. Is that a true story?
Is absolutely true. My poor mother would buy, some nice chocolates for guests coming to the house, and she would hide them in anywhere she could hide them. And I knew that there would be something in the house, chocolate hidden. So it was from when I was very young, I was always searching through the cupboards to try and find what she'd hidden.
But when was it clear for you? I mean, there was obviously an early passion and a love to chocolate, which probably a lot of people have out there. But from one thing is to have a love to chocolate to ended up doing chocolate. So not so much now about the Mirzam thing because we're going to dig into that deeper. But when did you first felt I can make a living out of that, or I can build something out of that? When was this moment when you felt, okay, this can be more than just an addiction or a hobby or whatever you want to call it?
I think I could probably trace it back to visiting Paris and, nearly 20 years ago now. And Pierre Marcolini had opened up his first store there outside of Belgium. And I was visiting Paris for my mother's 50th birthday. We were walking everywhere and we found this just beautiful boutique, and it looked like a jewelry store, not like an old-fashioned chocolaterie.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been creating these love heart-shaped truffles. We were there around Valentine's Day, and they were bright red. And the whole concept of being able to make a chocolate that was colorful but without adding coloring, and was raspberry, but without flavoring, and the beauty of the shop and the boxes and the whole thing just made my imagination go wild, that it was possible to create something like this. And then the engineering side of my brain kicked in, and I was sort of trying to understand the science behind the recipe and the food and the structure and the stability. And I can probably trace it from there to go from having an interest in enjoying chocolate to seeing it more as an engineer or as a business person and wanting to, understand the product and the market a bit more.
Now, Mirzam is actually taking that over because it's all about storytelling there, right? what story do you want to tell?
I suppose so. And we maybe with everything in life, you can't see the path until you get there. But my background was so diverse. I had been working in marketing and events, but I'd studied arts and science and management. I come from a long line of engineers on both sides of my family. And I never really appreciated what that would mean. And I didn't see how any of this would come together. It just felt like I was always going down the wrong path. And, I had started a few businesses of my own before I had moved into chocolate. I had tried out so many different careers, and every path just felt like it was a mistake till I met chocolate. And then it was like, oh, wow, all of this stuff can come together. So, the years that I spent working as a journalist between high school and university, suddenly the storytelling and the graphic design and understanding print production was critical to knowing how to package chocolate and market it and talk about it and promote it. And the events management was really important to sort of being able to deliver production plans and thinking about bumping in and setting up and sort of efficiency layouts. And this, all of my dad, I just remember him borrowing my camera, and it would come back with this memory card full of photos of machines and engines. And I'd be like, oh, and now my phone is the same. And my grandfather would take me through all of his processes of inventing the new different things he was always inventing. And it comes together, and somehow every single day I am all of those people that I was between zero and now, and all of the things that I learned have all come together. And at the time it just felt so awful, but that, growing up here and thinking that nobody would be interested in this sort of chocolate here, but learning all of the history and being in a local school here meant that this storytelling is so personal to me. We tell a lot of stories, and it's this wonderful, beautiful history of the Middle East and of Arabia that often I think gets sort of like glossed over for more exciting headlines. And yet that orient the history, the spices, the textiles, and so much of it is just fantastic and wonderful. And it's just endless inspiration for recipes, packaging, boxes, whatever it might be.
It's really interesting because this podcast is from about doubt and how that actually can initiate drive. And if I understand you right, and you said you were on the wrong paths before until you found that calling in a way. So is chocolate for you maybe even one of the, let's say, the solutions to get out of a doubt or out of a journey where you said, what should I do? Where should I go to?
I think it absolutely has been for me, because so many of those doubts, you have ambition and you have ideas and you want life to go so much faster than it appears to be when you're making these mistakes. But once you hit the right path and you realize how you got there, like I know that I always want to make chocolate. I wake up every day and I'm excited about making chocolate. And I know before I would sit in the office and get all my work done in the first 30 minutes of the day and then start working on all of my other ideas and projects. And, I was just constantly searching and digging, and I knew that I wasn't on the right path, that I was looking, and it was frustrating and depressing and really demotivating. And you know that there is something there, but you can't find it. And you do keep digging and digging. And I never saw the light until I did. So, people say, follow your passion. And I was like, shut up. No, I have things to do. I have to work. I'm not silly. There will be no passion following. And yet now all I want to tell people is make sure that what you do is something you're passionate about, because otherwise, what are you doing for, with your life and your time and every breath you have? I want everybody to be excited about every day as I am, because, chocolate ticks so many boxes of what makes me excited to be alive. The creativity, the chemistry, the engineering, it's all so inspiring to me.
I think we can feel that, although there's a couple of 100 or 1,000 kilometers between us. One theme of the podcast is also a theme which there's only a German word for it, and it's called Schwellenangst. And the Schwellenangst is the fear of threshold and borders. So basically, when you watch a Disney movie or Lord of the Ring, you always have that moment where the hero of that story is in front of a big obstacle and starts doubting him or herself and says like, should I risk it and go into this new venture, or would I shut like coward and stay in my comfort zone? It's basically going out of the comfort zone. And as an entrepreneur, we always have that at the beginning, obviously, but we also have it throughout our journey when we hit the big roadblock or struggle, that it's difficult for us to make a decision and move into this unknown. But for you specifically, because you shared now your journey, and you started that business with like a local Emirati brothers and sisters, and as a female entrepreneur and chocolate officer, what was your Schwellenangst back then? What fears did you had, or what thoughts did you had, or what thoughts maybe were holding you back and you had to overcome at the early stage of that career? Can you go back with us there?
It is important to note at this particular junction, 10 years in or however long it's been, that I have those moments every day, probably every half an hour. It's just this like constant battle of doubt and going, oh, how is it possible after this long we're still learning lessons? Oh my God. But it's constant. And I'm really, really lucky to have had the journey I have had and the support network I do to kind of hit those moments and have a little bit of a process now for dealing with them. So they're less, it's less of a cyclone when they happen as it was in the beginning. But it's still a road bump, and it's still upsetting, and it's a little bit more of like, I have an SOP for crappy moments now. In the beginning, I think a lot more of the doubt came from a sort of fight between my own ambition and recognizing I had so much yet to learn and wanting to go so fast that everything felt like you were just constantly being held back. And it has been, I think, especially maybe for the first 3 or 4 years, just this very big process of education and realizing that sometimes taking your time and doing things together and a little bit more patiently gets you to better places. And that had always given me a lot of doubt, like, oh my God, we're not going fast enough. We're not going to make enough sales. We're not making enough chocolate. Where are we going to go? If we can't do this, we're never going to, oh my God. And yeah, I think there is, a bit of a famous saying that direction is more important than speed. So, I really wanted to have a chocolate factory in Switzerland, and I thought that was the right thing to do.
Almost, Katie. You almost made it to Switzerland. Wrong climate, wrong continent.
Nearly.
But you said before at the beginning of the Schwellenangst, you said, I'm very interested about that. You said, I found my way how to deal with it. So what tools, because you said, I found my tools and systems to not make everything a cyclone, but like only a road bump. What tools are you using, or what do you use?
There's day-to-day tools. And so one of the day-to-day tools is that with any big news, I take 24 hours to think about it. And I try to be very proactive in making those decisions about what to do next. So I speak always to the shareholders. They're very experienced and very professional, and we're very transparent together. So I always take feedback from them. Then I speak to the rest of the team who might be involved and try to get as many different voices as I can when any of these, big crisis moments come up before we decide what to do next. But it's a 24-hour gap, with every big thing that happens, you have 24 hours to 48 hours of shock. And then, within that time frame, I think that you can make decisions too quickly or respond to things in a way that you might regret later. So the sort of like day-to-day first step is always just to slow down and think about it a little bit differently. I think the bigger picture, though, I have done a lot of work. I talk about it as having like, you have a therapist. I have a work therapist as well. And she's an amazing executive performance engineer who has a lot of experience. And she started a consultancy a couple of years ago in Dubai and works with all sorts of bigger businesses, but she does this sort of executive coaching as well. And she's restructured departments of massive organizations and she gives me very, very good consulting style feedback. So when I have one of these big crisis moments that comes up, I book a session and we talk through what's going on and come up with a very implementable plan of what we're going to do. And it's helped me, in a few different ways. One of the things that she's sort of made me realize is that the weaknesses in my own skill set were things that really sort of hit my confidence before. And now I've come to terms with them. There's other people that can do a way better job of accounting than me. It's not my thing. I'm not good at it. I like pie charts. I need these sort of reports to be, redesigned into a different way. And kind of, she has led me to be a lot more confident by accepting that I'm actually good at some things. And then the things that I'm not very good at, there are some other people out there who just love to do accounting. And luckily,
I think it's nobody here on that call who loves that. But there might be some people out there, I heard the rumors, Katie, who are...
Do you remember one of your biggest problems in business that you might share with us? And how did you solve that? No, yeah, today or over the past years?
I like that. Today it's like 8 o'clock in the morning, biggest problem today. I think you had more like the big elephant in your career who was really blocking your road.
It really does feel like that, though. We're in the middle of building a new shop at the moment, and it's such a different sort of dynamic to the previous places that we've opened. It's a lot more of a retail experience rather than a factory experience. And so I've had to relearn everything about understanding the sort of, when somebody comes to a chocolate factory or to a bakery, you have this, it's really easy to explain to the customer what you're doing and what the value of the product is or what the value drivers are. But in a retail mall environment, you have all of this direct competition and you don't have it's not a destination. The mall is the destination. You are like one of many, many, many options. So learning again, going way back to sort of management school about, consumer behavior and target marketing and segmentation, like these things that I just haven't applied because the factory dynamic is so different. So that at the moment, I think is like the big elephant that's blocking the road, is trying to understand how to, catch a customer's attention in the 4 minutes that they're passing through the retail experience that you offer in a very competitive environment. But maybe, earlier on, one of the, COVID was probably the biggest left-hand turn. It's not even a T-junction. There were no options. It was like, oh, wow, okay. We had from the beginning a highly diversified sort of product structure that covered export, wholesale, white labeling, and then the retail products that we do. We also have cafe experience, bakery. So we had a very diversified customer base. And overnight, all of a sudden, all our hotel customers stopped. All of our corporate B2B, all of our white label, just everything stopped. The cafe, people could still order for delivery, but so many things stopped. And I think this was a really big turning moment for me because of two things. One was that I had to stop, and that, I had to recognize my own physical limitations and how the way I had been working up until then was so unhealthy. So like slowing down and was a super healthy change for me for that period of time. But from the moment it kind of happened, I went from feeling very doubtful about my skills and my experience to, oh, I know what to do. I know what we're going to do. We're going to be okay. I have a strategy. I know what we're going to do, and A, B, C, D, E. And I ran through it, And
what did you do? What did you do then? Can you?
I did. I was really, it was just felt very organic and it felt very instinctual. But firstly, we had to make a couple of restructuring plans. I focused on fun products. I had seen a business case of a very high-end restaurant in Europe that had lost all of its bookings, of course, and changed to a burger pop-up. And the owner was talking about how nobody needs something serious right now. And Mirzam as a brand is it's luxury and bean to bar. And we talk about ourselves as taking chocolate very seriously. So I changed the tone of voice. We did fun recipes with a lot of sort of playfulness, popping candy, hazelnut spread, stuff that didn't make sense so much for the brand, but they were fun and light. Yeah. It was easy for people to get excited about. So I pivoted the product range. Then we changed the delivery options over one weekend in the dark in my bedroom, which is really easy to do during COVID. I had, because of my experience previously as a marketing consultant, was kind of able to do this, but deleted the website completely, set it up again with a really basic shopping cart interface, downloaded a theme, and made this very, very easy to sort of understand and process online ordering system to really try and push our online sales. We did then as sort of we had a few staff that we were never able to work around without because we were just so busy all the time. And so restructuring the business and having proper job descriptions, having time to implement these systems gave me, I was clear that we needed to do it. And it just made sense that this was a moment to try and find new customers, explore better job descriptions, look at how we're getting the product to our customers, looking at things like, really focusing on shelf life at that particular time when we needed more flexibility. Then when we reopened and the doors were sort of open, we had been moving into a new factory over that period of time. So we started building in early 2019 and we were supposed to be open in early 2020. But then everything slowed down. So the people that should have flown out with the machines from Germany and the US could no longer travel. And that led to this whole new set of enormous elephants of trying to figure out, okay, how do we build this machine? How do we get it going? Where are we going? But actually now that I understand the machines better, because I had to build them together over Zoom with my dad helping me and finding, friends, but being a lot more hands-on has given me a much better sense of our production capabilities and flexibilities. And I think, but it just felt very instinctual at that time. I was clear of what I needed to achieve. I saw that there was a light at the end. I knew we needed to pivot. There was no holding on to what we were doing yesterday. It was just like, oh, I know what we need. Okay, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I think for all of us was like this COVID such a big moment. And in all of these interviews we're doing, we hear a lot on how entrepreneurs, especially in our industry, use that crisis really as an opportunity. And we had a guest here, Ricardo Giraude, the founder of Beef Bar, and he said at the end he was so happy because finally these restaurants were closed, because a restaurant is never closed. And finally he had a couple of weeks and months to think of how to do it differently, because he said it never stops. Like our business never stops, and suddenly it had to stop. And I took this time. And I think also what you described now, to go closer to the business, to be hands-on, to question everything what was done so far. And probably as we look on your track record, it brought you out, not you, but you, the company, the brand, stronger than you went in. We now talked about the problem, but if you look at the industry of chocolate overall, which we tried to do before, and Florian and I discussed, we saw two big threats or troubles or negative scratches on the chocolate, so to say. Because first, the impression on chocolate, everything is great, everybody loves chocolate, etc. But then we thought, okay, what could be, if we would be chocolate entrepreneurs like you, what could be the threats if you think about it? And we had two thoughts. One was the topic around sustainability and fair recognition to the farmers out there where you buy the chocolate. And as you do bean to bar, I'm sure you have a strong opinion about that, and we would like to learn that. And the other one is the topic obesity, especially with kids, but also especially in your geography where you act. And as you do things differently probably than a lot of the old school chocolate brands, we would be really interesting to hear your take on both of that.
I probably start with the second one, and say just touch again on what I said earlier about how important it is to be following your values. And if you're following your values and your passion, it will take you in the right direction. A business is business. And if you can't find a way to make money out of what you're doing, it's not a viable business. And so there is always this kind of requirement at the end of the day, this is still a business. But I'm very, very lucky across both of the businesses that I run that I get to implement my values and that the businesses align with my values. And the environment and nature and ultra-processed foods are two things that I'm very interested in and want to see a lot more legislation around both of them. And, education is a baseline. But the second one, when we talk about food and obesity and these sorts of things, the more and more you learn about the impact on the human body of eating ultra-processed foods. And ultra-processed foods are anything that are, tomatoes to ketchup is a really good example. So, a whole tomato would be an unprocessed food. A chopped tomato is a level 1 processed food or level 2 processed food. Level 3 would be a cooked tomato, but you haven't added anything. You maybe add some salt and pepper, but they're very, standard natural ingredients. But a level 4 ultra processed food is the tomato turned into ketchup. It has chemical flavorings, nature identical flavorings. It has stabilizers, emulsifiers. It has a lot of things that are coming together to create this shelf stable, safe to consume, calorie, what's the word for it? You can calorie distribution approved. Like you're able to take a tomato with a very short shelf life and get it to people that might not necessarily be able to get hold of food. Maybe they're in a drought area or however that works. But in doing that, you have compromised the integrity of the tomato. And there is so much more science coming out now and reports, and they're just terrifying about the impact on the human body as well as nature of eating things in this level 4 category. And chocolate can really sit in level 3. Most of the chocolate that you find in the supermarket is, of course, level 4. It has a lot of flavors and emulsifiers and things in it. But if you can find good quality chocolate with just cocoa beans and sugar of some description, the impact on health is pretty limited. Somebody called me the other day and they were like, how come when I eat your chocolate, I only need a little bit, but if I go to the supermarket and I buy a chocolate bar, I want to eat the whole thing. And I was like, welcome to my TED Talk. Please let me talk at you about how these sort of highly processed foods, they are highly addictive. People aren't aware of how much they're eating. They eat faster than what their body can tell them they're eating at. So they just eat more and more and more. They're like structured in order to melt quickly in the mouth so you can eat another piece. And then, yes, the sugar and the fat element are there. And that is something to think about. But sugars are not the enemy. It's not the problem. And, replacing something like cane sugar with date sugar or coconut sugar or an alternative, it has the same impact on the body. Your body breaks these things down into very similar chemical compounds. And some of them will have more nutritional benefit. But if you're avoiding sugar because you have a blood sugar problem, that, all sugars are not going to be your friend. And then artificial sugars, the impact they have on the gut biome, on the hypothalamus in the brain, it's terrifying. It's truly, truly terrifying. And there's some fantastic books and science and podcasts and more coming out about this. And it's just the shorter the list of ingredients, avoid, eating out. If you're going to eat out and you're going into, anywhere that has very shelf-stable processes or a lot of sauces, just walk away, please.
Before we come to the sustainability, Katie, I need to jump into this ketchup, because the last 7 years of my life I have cooked ketchup, and I fully agree what you said. But at least there is one brand out there, Katie, which is not level 4, and I need to send you to Italy from our friend Mert, and he has stocked our ketchup. It's called Curtis Brothers. And it was a similar journey than yours, because I refuse to accept that ketchup needs to be shit. And I cook ketchup like you would cook it at home. And you take tomato. We only added 6% sugar, which is the minimum you can add to keep it safe, stable. You add garlic, onions, and you cook it like a sauce. And yes, you have a shorter shelf life, but it's so much better and so much tastier. But it's not about ketchup. I just had to say it, Katie, because my whole last 7 years, I was out there doing the similar education which you do on chocolate about ketchup.
It's exactly it, and I think that the next big opportunity in the food industry is going to be trying to find a way to distribute calories. They sort of, or what I'm led to understand, and I don't know how true this is, that there is enough food in the world for everybody, but it's not all in the right places. So being able to produce food and then distribute it so we don't have waste. Some of this, means that you're going to require chemicals and require plastic packaging and things like that. But I think the next big movement is going to be trying to find ways to get that stability without the chemicals that are just, being led to be leading people who maybe don't have options to these terrible health outcomes. And the more I know about it, the more depressing it kind of is to see how it's just, people work hard and they have long commutes to work and they might not have the budgets. And your option is, it's just this awful sort of cycle where you keep having to make a bad food choice because you're not given good choices. So I think across across Mirzam and across Birch, the bakery that I ran, we use regeneratively farmed wheat and flour, and it's unrefined sugars and no preservatives, no chemicals, no emulsifiers. I asked one of the owners, what's your favorite thing about owning a chocolate factory? And he said to me, the ability to control what is going into the food that I eat. And it's, that it gives me such great joy that the people I'm working with are aligned on this. We want to eat good food, and maybe it's chewier, crunchier, and or different from the sort of supermarket crap that people have become accustomed to with lots of bakery or chocolate products. But I don't care.
Katie, we always ask our guests if they have a special advice for young entrepreneurs who struggle, and it's so nice that you said today or in the past, but maybe if a young entrepreneur reaches out to you in a situation where he says, "Oh, look, I'm in uncharted territory. What should I do?" What would you tell him or her?
I would tell them to go back to bed and get 3 full nights sleep, and then come and see me again. And I think that's been a massive learning for me, and it's something that it's been a bit of had to become a compromise to be able to sustainably work at the level that I do and put in the hours, and not just the hours, but put in the correct mindset when I go to work. I need to sleep well. I need to go to bed early. I don't drink. I have to look after myself. If I don't, I can't be a good leader. I can't be a good boss. I'm all over the place. So I would say that first. If you're stressed, you're having a difficult moment, go to bed. Come back when you're calm and rested and you've had enough water. The next thing I would tell them is, to really make sure they are following their values. It's I think this big common misconception that all business entrepreneurs are villains and businessmen, and the only way to get ahead is by, either having a huge ego or being awful to competitors and customers and being sneaky. And it's just not true. The highest performing businesses that that I associate with and that I work with are led by people who are very, very values oriented and very honest. And I think there is a path to having a successful business that comes from doing the right thing. And then I would say find yourself a work therapist. It might be the consultant or, the paid service that you go to for advice, but it can also be experienced professionals in the industry. Don't ask friends and family who aren't involved. Talk to people who really have experience, and they're going to give you critical feedback and ideas that you can actually implement and you can use.
So strong advice. I really like that.
Yeah.
Before I come to the last personal question, I want to thank Mert, who is hopefully listening, who brought us together, because it was a good hinge to suggest to talk to you. So for all the listeners out there, send us ideas who we should interview, because we really follow through. Katie is a good example on how we did that. So my last question, Katie, to close that, because this picture, since yesterday when I read that I see you standing as a picture like a 5-year-old girl standing on this chair trying to reach for chocolate, which the mommy has hidden. If this 5-year-old chocolate searching Katie would now look at the current version of Katie, version 3.0, whatever you want to call yourself, 4.0, what would she think? What would this girl think about the current version?
Oh, I'd like to think that she's very proud. It took me a while to get here and be comfortable with who I am. And, I often, when I meet my friends and industry colleagues, and I don't think of myself as being in the food and beverage industry. I think of myself as being in the food manufacturing industry and being in engineering. And I definitely have more of an engineering brain and personality. And that's not always the easiest. And I think I struggled for a long time to be comfortable with being a genetic engineer. I think 5-year-old Kathy would be like, oh my God, finally, you're okay with it. Good. We need an engineer.
And I'm sure she would be very happy to know that she owns a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
So that dream came through. Thank you so much for your time, Katie. We really enjoy it. And good luck with everything. Keep on following your dreams. Keep on building chocolate factories. And all the best.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Well, that was a nice episode. And I would say, Mario, it's really exciting to have new faces in that sense on our show.
Incredible.
It's really cool to learn something completely new, because the other guests, they are established entrepreneurs. You read more about them, and now with Katie Johnston, we actually had a new face and a new insight. So what
a story. I mean, and also, like, before we come there, please, guys, take the chance, send us ideas. Our friend Mert sent us this great idea from Katie. We follow through and we really love it. Give a suggestion of great entrepreneurs out there. So
you're first.
I loved it. I really loved her approach to say, at the beginning, every crisis was like a cyclone, and I needed to find processes and tools to make them only road bumps. And she was so open in sharing her struggle, because when you asked Florence, what was your biggest crisis? And she said, you mean today?
Yeah, I'm very honest. Very honest.
Very honest. So from a cyclone to a road bump, try to make not every crisis and blow it out of proportion. A very strong learning.
Yeah, she obviously is a person who thinks a lot about those doubts in business, and who is self-aware enough to see that this is let's say it is basically a constant struggle you are facing, and which you have to handle. And I really love that she said, I have an SOP, so a standard operational procedure for crappy moments. And one of these SOP is obviously that she said, I think about it for 24 hours before I make a tough decision.
Rule, yeah. So 24-hour rule, don't do anything before you get sleep. And she mentioned that later in the podcast. So when you ask her about what advice to give to entrepreneurs and struggling, she said, go to bed and get rest. And that's obviously part of the 24-hour rules. A good night's sleep always helps. So 24-hour rules was great. And also like get yourself a work therapist. Yeah. And I think it was great to understand from her that she says, I need help. I didn't want to share that with somebody who doesn't understand the context. I want to share it with a specialist. She called it work therapist, consultant, mentor, whatever. And I think we also know that from our journey, Florian, we always need this mentor, sounding board, work therapist, whatever you call them, strong learning.
Another one is make sure you follow your values. Really,
and also I had in my notes the learning via the work therapist to say accept that you don't need to be good at everything. And she mentioned this examples of accountants when she said like I'm just not good at that. So accept that you don't need to be good at everything. And she's amazing storyteller and she knows how to use the words. And in the beginning of the podcast, she said, I never saw the light till I did. I really love that quote. I never saw the light till I did.
There's nothing more to add.
I think there's nothing more to add. I really want to get now this chocolate bar, Florian. Yeah. So I think I'm closer actually to Dubai than you are. So I probably have for me, it's a 4-hour flight. So Katie, we're coming.
We meet in the middle.
we meet in the middle, get some chocolate. Thank you for this great podcast.
Thank you.
Tune in next week. Goodbye, Florian. Bye-bye.
Bye, Mario. Bye-bye.
Wow. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we did. But sharing is not just caring. It is also empowering. So recommend this podcast to fellow entrepreneurs who might need a dose of inspiration. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on future episodes. Thank you for being part of the community from Doubt to Drive Entrepreneurs Only. Mario and Florian are already gearing up for the next episode. Until then, stay tuned, stay driven, and we'll be back next week.